Here we go. Yes?
I had a question. Will you be converting the presentation into PowerPoint so it can be a little larger?
Yeah, so here's a good thing. So let's see. Can you guys see the screen right here where you see the first slide of the PowerPoint?
Yes, yeah. and I see the side slide.
Yeah. So I'm so not good with technology, but so what I do is I know that if I hit that, I actually think I just have to switch over my screen because it only shows up on my first screen for some reason. So you guys can see this here, right?
Yes, yes.
Okay, good. We'll do it that way. It was being finicky, and I was like, why is it not going on my second screen? But we'll just do it this way. All right. So let's get started with our WrapTrack presentation, and we'll kind of just walk through a quick agenda here. We're really just going to go ahead and talk about sort of the flow of WrapTrack and what that looks like, how it looks in comparison to what you're used to in Wonders. And additionally, we'll discuss some new logins and password guidelines that have come up in the last couple of weeks that we've learned about. So we'll share that information with you guys. Also talk about a little bit of a quote-unquote testing that we want you to participate in. And Contra Costa, this should sound familiar, and you guys will probably not even have to do this. So considering that that's already occurred for you guys. So just block that out when we get to that section. And then we'll just do a quick view of some screenshots, talk about the timeline again of that testing, and then go right into an actual live demo of the site. So that's sort of our agenda for today. Okay, so let's talk about a couple of things that are going to be important to note about making WrapTrack work the most efficiently on your computer. So some things that are going to be helpful would be to have as much of an up-to-date system, operating system on your computer as you can. And you can see that listed here, it says Windows 7. But, oops, there we go. I wanted to highlight it, but it didn't like that, so I'll leave that be. But Windows 7 is listed as the requirement. However, even maybe more important would be having an updated internet browser. There's a few options there that would be completely fine. However, we've noticed that if you really use Google Chrome, that's the best way to visually experience WrapTrack. And the link to Google Chrome, if you don't already have it downloaded on your computer, is right there. So I would recommend really using that because it really opens the system up in the way that the programmers sort of intended things to be and the way that it they wanted it to look. So we'd recommend that. Additionally, as you're in this either Google Chrome or whatever browser you use, but make sure that your pop-up blockers are disabled, because we have noticed that sometimes when you're opening things in other reports, etc., it might be challenging to see that if you don't have your pop-up blocker disabled. So I'm going to pause here. Do we have someone that joined us?
Renee Cordera.
Hi, Renee. This is Hattie Quick at the University of Washington.
Hi.
We're glad that you're able to join us.
Thank you.
And just to get you caught up on where we are, we're just doing a really quick a quick PowerPoint presentation before we get into the actual WrapTrack demo. And we did go ahead and do introductions. So if you wouldn't mind maybe just saying your name and sort of your role in your organization and what you'll be using WrapTrack for, that would be great.
Okay, I'm with North Carolina Families United in Alamance County. I'm a research assistant with Christina Christopoulos at Duke University for Child and Family Policy Center. So that's what I do.
Great. Well, welcome. Christina is also on the line, and we have another organization doing the training as well today. So if you have any questions, Renee, as we're going through, just feel free to jump in at any point.
Okay, thank you.
Sure. Okay, so again, I'll just kind of point out most up-to-date system, as up-to-date of an internet browser, possibly using Google Chrome might be the best experience for you. And then again, just checking to make sure pop-up blocker is disabled. And then finally on this slide, you'll see that there are a few emails that you want to maybe make sure are on your safe sender list. Obviously, the first one there, WrapEval, is connected to the University of Washington, so you should already probably have that on your list. And the other two are connected to WrapTrack, and we'll talk a little bit about why you see WrapTMS listed there. And that'll sort of be throughout the system, and we'll discuss that in more detail in a minute here. But please make sure to add those as well, because those no reply email addresses that you see will be sent to you if you've forgotten your password for whatever reason or something like that. So keep that in mind. All right, so let's continue moving on. And here's that fancy slide you got a preview of a second ago. All right, so this should all seem pretty similar. The WrapTrack contains the Wi-Fi 4, the TOM for those of you who use it, and also the Wi-Fi EZ. So we'll talk a little bit about that right now. But if folks are interested in that or wanting to learn more about that, feel free to again email rapeval@uw.edu for more information. And Priscilla, I believe that you guys were looking to get some more information about that, or even move forward and starting to use that. So if we want to hang on the line after the end of the training, we can go ahead and talk about that and get you guys set up if that's something you're interested in. All right. So let's talk a little bit about why this is actually relating to WrapTMS. Are folks on the phone familiar with WrapTMS?
No.
No.
Okay. So let's talk a little bit about that. And the way that we like to describe this is, so WrapTMS is sort of like this great house or plot that you just purchased, and it has a house on it, and also there's like a mother-in-law entrance, so to speak. And so WrapTMS is that larger house, and WrapTrack is sort of that mother-in-law entrance. It's connected to the house. It's there. They share some similar things, but at the same time it is different and removed. And so WrapTMS is sort of this larger system that actually is designed to track a lot of different things connected to the wraparound process as a whole for the whole team, whereas WrapTrack is really specific to just that fidelity data collection piece and managing the details around that. So they are on the same TMS platform, and TMS means Team Management System, but yet they are different. Now, if folks are interested in WrapTMS, so let me just go to the next slide, and these are the types of things, again, that WrapTMS is able to provide. It's another type of management information system, essentially is what it is. And for those who use management information systems in their organization already, this could be a great update if that seems to be a necessary next step, or for those who don't have one, this might be an interest to you. The great thing about WrapTMS, however, is that it does have this interoperability where it can work with other systems to minimize or eliminate double data entry if, for example, there's a system in your state or your community that is required to use. However, WrapTMS looks very attractive or interesting, and you want to figure out a way to incorporate it. It does have that ability to work with other systems. There's some sort of like push and pull. The programmers have tried to explain it to me, but again, I'm not as tech savvy as that, so it's in general, it's a little bit more challenging for me to understand. But they seem to be able to make it work, so that's great. And essentially, the types of things again that it tracks would be sort of these plans of care and meeting notes, contacts, a family history, as well as like some satisfaction and outcomes, as you can see listed there. So there are some additional pieces of information that I can share with you on this slide, but basically you're entering WrapTMS and WrapTrack on a single point of entry, and you can see listed right here that this is the URL, and you'll note that that's the same URL for WrapTrack. So you go to the same place, you log in at the same location, and either if you're only participating in the WrapTrack portion, which you guys on the phone are all doing just that piece at the moment, it'll just take you to that. Or if you're interested in purchasing WrapTMS, which again is a separate thing to manage your entire wraparound process, then that's something that you would, contact us about separately, and we could get you connected with that. But as well, those youth files that are in WrapTrack and WrapTMS do link over, so that's another neat feature. So we're just letting our collaborators know about it because it might be something that is interesting or helpful. But if it's not, you can just ignore that. If you, excuse me, if you would like to know more about it, or to maybe even participate in like a little trial of it, you can contact us again, and we can get you set up with a 30-day pass, free 30-day pass, so that you can get some trial logins, play around with it, see if it makes sense for you guys. But again, this might be more of something that, providers in your communities would be interested in using, and so you may want to pass that information on. That's up to you. All right, so any questions about that part of it, or how WrapTMS is connected to WrapTrack at all?
Nope. No, I think we're okay.
All right, so let's go ahead and move on. Excuse me. So you can see, again, here's that URL I was mentioning at the top. And this is the login screen again. And I'll just reiterate what I was mentioning before. You'll see WrapTMS sort of throughout the login screen, and even when you log into WrapTrack. However, it'll say WrapTrack just below it when you're in the WrapTrack portion of the site. But here's your username and password, and there's also this new feature down here, forgot password link. And we'll talk about why that's important in a minute, because again, you might have recalled I was mentioning that there are some changes with the password guidelines, etc. So we'll get into that right now. Okay. So passwords, because this system, is HIPAA-FERPA compliant, we have some really structured ways that our passwords now need to be set up. So you can see listed here between 6 to 16 characters in length, at least one letter, one number, and a special character. The reason being that you'll need to kind of keep a tight watch on your passwords for this new system is that April and I at WIRT at University of Washington no longer have the ability to know what your passwords are. So you guys are going to need to be the ones sort of in charge of that and managing it. And really, it can't even be your supervisor or something like that. If you have your own individual password and username, you're really going to be the one that's in charge of maintaining that. Now, some folks in some communities were set up where there's one password and username for data entry and one for like a supervisor and that type of thing, and folks would share. And if that's the case, you can continue to do that. You just have to be really open about what's going on and what password is the most recent, etc. And so it really might make sense if that was a way that you used to share passwords and usernames, is really to maybe give each individual their own username and password now. And if that's something that you are interested in doing and haven't already done so, just let me know. We can talk through how to do that at the end of today's training. But it's a fairly simple process in terms of managing your own password, but just to note, obviously, that it does now need to be HIPAA-FERPA guidelines for the passwords. And I will say that when you log into WrapTrack for the first time, and Contra, Costa folks, this might be a little bit different, but when you log into WrapTrack for the first time, you can use your Wonders username and password. So since you haven't used that in a couple months, you're going to want to try to track that down, figure out where that is, and make sure to use that when you log in initially. Now, for those who are logging in for the first time, you may be able to log right in, no problems, and just go to work and start getting immersed in the system. However, others may be prompted right away to change their password because it's not HIPAA-FERPA compliant. So keep that in mind, and if that's the case, it's not a problem. It just walks you through sort of what you need to do to be able to change that, and then it'll ask you to re-log in with that new password. You'll obviously want to write that new password down right away because, again, as we were mentioning, it's not something that that we can keep track of for you anymore. So definitely keep that in mind. And then the final piece of that is that we have also, and we are not sure why, but there are also times when people have logged in with their Wonders ID, an old password, and have been able to log in right away, and then 3 days later they're requested to change it. So it's just, probably the kinks of a new system sort of working its way out. But just keep that in mind that you may be able to use it for 60 days, you may have to change it right away, or even randomly in a couple of days from now it may ask you to change it. So, but at any rate, you will have to change it as well every 60 days. And then when you're doing that, keep in mind, though, that you have to, oh gosh, I did it again, that this bullet here says there's a history of 10 previous passwords that the system maintains. So you're not able to reuse those passwords. You'll need to come up with a new one each time. And then additionally, as the next bullet says, you can change your password at any time if you'd like prior to the 60 days, to every 60 days. If there's a reason behind that, I'll show you how to do that as well. If you log in 5 times and you use an invalid login within the span of 10 minutes, your user ID will become disabled. Now, if that happens, pretty easy fix. You just reach out to me or to April or someone here at UW, and we'll make sure to get into the system and make your user ID become enabled again. So that's not a hard fix, but just note that you'll have to reach out to excuse me, you'll have to reach out to us if you do become disabled as a user. Additionally, let's talk about periods of inactivity. So if you've left your computer for a certain amount of time, you will be logged out of the system. Now, you can choose, however, what time frame you want it to be, and you can update that as regularly as possible if you want. So it can be anywhere between 15 to 60 minutes, and let's say that you're in the office and you have your own space, and you know that when you walk away from your desk you can shut your door and obviously no one's going to touch your computer. You may choose that time to be a little bit longer versus, let's say you're at home and you're needing to work on something, you may want that to be a shorter amount of time. All the passwords are encrypted in storage, but again, we don't necessarily have access to them, but they are there, which is why you're able to get your no-reply emails sending you that information. So, all right, so that's a lot of information about passwords. A lot has changed around that. Are there questions or concerns about passwords?
Nope.
Okay, and for Contra Costa folks, again, I know that you guys, had already logged into the system and were doing some beta testing for us. Now, keep in mind that that was on a sort of different server. Have you guys been into WrapTrack within the last week?
No, we haven't.
Okay, so since it's now on a new server, when you guys log in as well, you might experience this password change. So keep that in mind, even though you've been in the system before. It was on a different server, and it may need you to update passwords if you haven't already done so. So just bear that in mind. Okay, so let's talk a little bit about the permissions in WrapTrack versus what you used to see or experience in Wonders. So in Wonders, there was this very rigid levels 1 through 5, and these types of permissions were not flexible at all. It was very strict in terms of who could only access this information. So the local head, level 2 folks always had the ability to really see all of that information. Obviously, we were at level 1, and we could actually access anybody's information at any point, and as well as passwords, as we mentioned before. And then level 3 was really strict about data entry and reporting and exporting, and then level 4 only data entry. So there are some really strict guidelines around what had to look like. Versus WrapTrack on the other side of the screen, if you look at that, there are still these sort of roles that align with sort of the certain permissions that you would have had in Wonders will have mapped over to what you will now have in WrapTrack. However, this is what's a bit different, that you can really customize these permissions. So, for example, if your old level 2 person, your local head, now becomes, for example, the configuration admin, and they want the program admin and a team member to really be able to do the exact same thing, that is completely okay. You may not necessarily want that. That may not even make sense. However, it's just to let you guys know that, really all 3 of these levels here, the program, supervisory, and team member, could all have the same roles and permissions, essentially, if that was something your community wanted to do. But you may just want to maintain sort of the system that you already had, which again would have mapped over from Wonders already. Just your role titles will be different, obviously. They're just not levels 1, 2, and 3 anymore. They actually have these actual names. But if you have questions about that once you're starting to get in there and really play around with it, let us know. The person that was identified in your organization, pending that individual is still connected to this project, but that person you would want to make sure probably local head would be your configuration admin. So for that person, if you know who you are and you go in and you're not actually listed as the configuration admin, you're going to want to email me, let me know, and I'll get you set up as that, because that's the only one that you guys aren't actually able to change. You can make someone a program, a supervisor, a team member, I think even a jurisdictional, but not a configuration. That has to happen at this top level from the design administrators, which are April and myself. So, that's just some basic information. This might not ever really affect you guys as you're in WrapTrack at all. You may just set up your system or tweak it a little bit and never have to think about it again. So I'll kind of just move on from there. So let's talk just a little bit about these possible examples so that you could set up if you're interested in doing that. So if you wanted to tweak anything or make any adjustments, here are just 2 examples you can see of how people sort of set things up. Obviously, again, April and I at Wirt are sort of those design admins at the top. You can have evaluators as configuration or jurisdictional admins, the agency heads, a statewide administrator. Obviously, some of those other levels, the program or supervisory admins can be, folks who are doing the data entry, facilitators, supervisors, what have you. So it's really up to you, again, how you want to configure this. We could, again, leave it as is or make some adjustments if you'd like. All right, let's get into the screenshots. So we're looking at the home page right here, and you can see that at the very, very top, it sort of tells you, okay, this is who's logged in, this is their organization. Here's where you can change your password if you'd like to do it more frequently than every 60 days. And additionally, here's some user settings. And in the user settings, and when we actually go into the live site, I'll show this a little bit better, but in these user settings, this is where you're going to be able to adjust that inactivity period, as well as a few other things, updating your email address, for example, if you need to do that, some of that information. All right, and then you can see here in this dashboard tab that we have a couple of different boxes with information. So youth records is probably going to be the thing that's going to be the most important to everybody, and you'll want to have this here. You can have youth names or just IDs here. It's up to you. Pardon me, this reminders box at the bottom is actually something, again, that is really more relating to WrapTMS, not necessarily WrapTrack. So I would recommend just clicking on that X and removing it. So it's simple to just get that out of the way so it doesn't get distracting. It doesn't necessarily have any actual role in WrapTMS. I'm sorry, in WrapTrack. Everything is wrap everything, so it's hard to keep it straight. Apologies. And then you'll also see the quick links box here. And this is a great way if you just really quickly need to add a new use record or find a use if you don't feel like kind of tabbing through these numbers. And then this configuration setup, not everyone's going to have this. So this is really going to be for some of those higher level administrators. Not everyone will have this setup box down below. All right, and I want to just draw your attention, final piece, to the menu button, and we've highlighted in red because it is a little small, but this is going to be the way that you sort of navigate through the site. So when you click on that, let's go to the next slide. A drop-down comes up, and it actually gives you a time and date stamp, lets you click right here on this Home tab to go back to the home page. Here's again an Enrollment tab where you can add new youth or find a youth record or look at all youth records. So that tab, I'll show you what it looks like when it's expanded as well, a couple options. And then you'll have a Reports and Data Export section. And that's where you'll access that information. Final tab is below here, and that's the admin tab. Not everybody, again, you can see is not everybody's going to have this. So if you really maybe focus only on data entry, that admin tab won't even show up as a permission that you have. So you can just ignore it. But for those who are going to be administrators, especially those like sort of local heads or level 2s, the Word Wonders that we want to make configuration admins now in WrapTrack, you will probably be using this tab more so than anyone else. And this is sort of where you're going to add new users, remove users, or disable users if you need to for whatever reason. Additionally, manage permissions. That would all happen on this admin tab. So we'll talk about that closer to the end. And I'm just going to go through these slides fairly quickly because even though we've expanded this presentation, it's still rather small print. So we'll move fairly quickly through here. But this is exactly what you're going to see when you have a youth record open. And so there's names, information. Again, you can decide what of this type of information you want to keep, IDs versus actual names. But focus down here at the bottom, which is enrollment, because when you first create a new youth record in WrapTrack, you're going to have to make sure that this youth changes from pending to enrolled. And you can see down here, you can see that when you click on that button, a pop-up box shows up and actually says pending at first. And you may want to leave that youth pending for a few days, or you might want to immediately change them to enrolled. So that's up to you in terms of the timing of that, the dates that you connect to that, whatever seems the most appropriate. And we can work through that as we get into actual entry of a test youth here, but that's going to be important to note. You're going to want to make sure that you change that status from pending to enrolled. Otherwise, I believe that data does not show up in your reports. So that's important to do, and that's how you would access that information. So we'll talk a little bit more about that in the demo. And then here's where you would do your WIFI data entry, and I'll show you also what the TOM looks like as well, but here's where you would access that information. On a youth record, you could see, obviously, we were on the youth tab part of that. The assessments tab is right next to it, and that takes us here. And that's where you're going to have your WIFI forms listed, your TOM forms if you have those. You're going to add that data by clicking on Add if you need to add an additional form or edit a form. Again, I want to point out that some folks, again, might have only had permissions to enter this data in Wonders and not necessarily edit it or change it in any way. But if you'd like to, change that or update that now, again, I'll show you how to make sure to do that if you want to have or give folks that do data entry the permission to edit these types of forms. So we'll talk about that. And then you can see it just pops up with another screen, pop-up screen, that shows you, visually this looks a little bit different, but in terms of content, same questions, same responses, just looks visually different, and we'll go through those in more detail here in a bit. Reporting, similar structure. The reports, some of them have been expanded upon in terms of, moving youth demographics and school information into separate reports, and some have been condensed. So, for example, the strengths and areas of improvement section are now all in the same report. So that's why you only see 10 listed here for WIFI, and we've done the same for TOM, so that just make a note of that. But the reporting is just set up a little bit differently now, whereas before you would put in all of your qualifying information and then you would click on, complete or whatever, or continue, and it would actually generate all of the reports for you with those qualifiers. We've set it up differently this time so that if people just want to pull one report, you don't want to look at all of the data, you just want to look at one thing, you could click on that link and then enter your qualifying information and run the report. Now, if you still would like to look at, report 1, and then you do want to look at all 10, you click on the link, you enter your qualifying information, and then there is another button that actually says Keep Qualification, and I'll show you that when we get into the actual system. But it says Keep Qualification, and you select that in order to keep those same qualifiers throughout all 10 reports. So that's just a little bit of a different setup, but it does give folks the flexibility to just pull one report at a time if you only want to do that. So reports fairly similar still. We've just kind of cleaned them up a little bit visually in terms of how they look. So not too much different there. Exporting is going to be the place that is pretty different compared to what we used to do, and we'll walk through that a little bit later. And I don't want to dwell on this because this is obviously a pretty tiny screen here to see. But you basically will select your use, if it's one person that you're looking at or multiple use, what type of form you want to look at, and then there's some additional filtering data down below here, like a date range. Do you want to push it into Excel? That type of thing. So then if you do push it into Excel, it sort of has this look to it here at the bottom, just a little bit cleaner. You can see there's actually like these borders around it, which helps with visually looking at this data a little bit more. So we'll show you an exact longer export here in a minute. TOM data entry, again, located in the same place. It's that Assessments tab that you can see. If you have the ability to enter TOM forms, when you click on Add, a pop-up box will come up and it will just say TOM there, and then you'll go ahead and add that information and move on. And this is what the data entry screen actually looks like. Again, we'll focus on this a little bit more as we're in the demo. So I think that's actually the next, oh, no, reports, okay. So as you see here, same kind of setup. Reports 1 through 6, some of them were combined. I don't think actually any were expanded upon for the TOM. I think we actually just combined when appropriate. And again, TOM reports, visually kind of contain the same information. We just try to clean them up a little bit and make them look a little bit different. So I'm going to go ahead and close out of that, and now I want to pull up my information here. Okay, so any questions before we go right into the actual live demo?
Oh, not yet.
Great. All right. So, sorry, I was taking a minute to grab a sip of coffee. Okay. I'm going to log in using our fake username of Brad Pitt and just continue on with that. All right. And you can see here that we've gone ahead and expanded that youth record box as well as the quick links, and that we've just removed the My Reminders altogether. And again, you can do that by clicking here. This, minimizes things or completely closes them all together. Oh, that's weird. I don't know why it moved it up top like that. But anyway, so you get the idea. You can just adjust it, whatever way makes sense. You're really not going to do anything wrong, because even if you accidentally hit X here, you can go back up to the dashboard and click Add Items, and then you can select these again. So if I wanted to add my reminders back in, it would do that. So it's not the end of the world if it happens. But I'm just again going to close that out. Given me 2 quick links, so these are things that easy to do, not a problem. All right, so what I want to do is I'll show you how to actually enroll a new youth first, and then we'll kind of play around in some existing data. All right, so the very first thing that you want to do is you can click on the menu button again, and you can go to the Enrollment tab, which expands to your 3 options here: Add a new youth, Work with an existing youth, or Work with all youth. Or you can simply just access that information on your quick links. So add a new youth record. I'll just access it through the quick links. So I'll click on add a new youth record. And one thing to point out here, again, this is the whole, if you don't want to use first and last name, you can use ID. So if you were to leave these, actually just leave them blank and enter your WRAP ID first, and I'll just do that for the purposes of this example. And your WRAP ID can have numbers, letters, even a period if you wanted it to have that information. So let's just say we wanted it to be HQ.25, something like that. That should work completely fine. And if I click off of that field, you'll see that it auto-populates right into first and last name. And that's that information that's here at the bottom. So you can also use first and last name, and that's completely fine. Additionally, on this screen, I want to point out, obviously, you have your regular old drop-down boxes here. That's normal. But again, if you don't want to use date of birth, you can just, I think it's just appropriate to do that. Completely fine. That passes because some folks don't want to use that type of identifying information. You certainly don't have to fill out these, street or phone numbers or anything like that if that's not data that you collect or want to track in the system. Not necessary to add that. And case number, Medicaid number, and WRAP ID is what I want to focus on next. So case number and Medicaid number are just here because if you want to track some of that information, you're more than welcome. You, again, don't have to do that. The WRAP ID, though, is something, and we're trying to work with the programmers to get an actual asterisk, red asterisk like those over here, because it is something that we would require you to enter. But it's not possible, again, because of the link between WrapTMS and WrapTrack, and this field, ID field, is not necessarily something that they want to allow a required field in WrapTMS. So that's the reason behind why there's no asterisk there. But WRAP ID is the same as what we used to call Youth and Family ID in Wonders. So that ID is what we're going to ask you to put in here. And basically, this is all you have to do in terms of adding this information. And most of this is, just basic generic stuff that you probably, have a demo form and you've pulled that and you would get that information from the demo form. So I'm just going to go ahead and hit save. A separate pop-up box shows up, and then it says, great, you added it successfully. Do you want to continue to add additional details for this particular youth record? I'm going to click yes for the demonstration, but let's say that you're entering or adding multiple youth records, new youth records. You may want to hit no, and then you can just continue to add more and more, just like we were doing. But again, I'm going to click yes. So you can see that as soon as I click yes, it generates that youth file for me. So a couple of things. Obviously, you can see first and last name that were auto-populated by the WRAP ID, some of this other information, and obviously I left a lot of it blank because I just didn't want to add that. And then also, if you ever forget that WRAP ID is that Youth and Family ID, once the file itself has been created, you can kind of just hover over it and it reminds you right there, Youth and Family ID. Again, don't feel compelled to enter case number or Medicaid number if that's not something you're interested in keeping track of. We really were just trying to focus on eliminating the need to enter so many IDs that, are some of them, a lot of the times, were just the same kind of thing. So, okay. A couple of other things to note here would be this box that's grayed out here. This actually tells you, okay, this was entered by this individual on this day, and it was edited last on such and such day. So obviously, if we go into this file tomorrow and I make an edit to something in here, it will have tomorrow's date on there, which is kind of a nice way to just keep track of what's going on with these files. Additionally, oops. This bottom section is what I wanted to highlight here. The bottom section, you can see this says primary caregiver, enrollment status, and facilitator. Now, a couple things I want to point out is, and obviously for those of you in North Carolina that are just doing the TOM, this section will not be filled in. It will continue to remain blank, as you can see with these dashes for caregiver and facilitator. And that's because this information is generated strictly from the WIFI 4 forms. So the caregiver's name will only show up if you complete a caregiver form and add that information. The facilitator name will only show up if you complete a facilitator form. So that's just something important to note, that will probably look just like this for those folks that use the TOM only. However, we do want to make sure that we change from pending to enrolled. So let's just talk about this and break it down in terms of steps. So we did step 1, which is simply adding a new youth record. Step 1, complete, done. Let's go on to step 2, which is enrollment. So I'm going to click on the green enrollment button. As you can see, again, this pops up into a separate window, which again is why pop-up blocker needs to be disabled, because there are so many different windows that pop up into the system, so keep that in mind. Obviously, you can see that this says pending. Here's the date. This is how long it's been. If you feel like you need to edit that for whatever reason, you can. Again, not everybody will have the permissions to be able to edit and delete, but some will. What I'll do is I'll go ahead and click on Add Enrollment Status, and this is where you're actually going to enroll the youth. And I'm just going to select today's date because we're doing it all on the same day here. And I'll click on the drop-down and click Enrolled. One thing I do want to point out, though, is if you want to, for whatever reason, track discharge youth in here now, it's a little bit more easier than it used to be in Wonders. So let's just select that. I just want to use that as an example. I'm not going to actually discharge this youth yet, but you can select discharge, and then the drop-down box actually below gives a few reasons as to why this youth might have been discharged. Again, not something you need to track. You don't necessarily need to track their discharge or a date that connects with, but if you'd like to, you have the ability to do that in the system. I'm going to go back to Enrolled, and then I'm actually going to go ahead and select the site now that, that this youth is connected to. And if you have some subsites, they'll be listed here, so that's important to note. And you would make the selection of the site at the time of enrollment. So I'm going to go ahead and hit Save. And it tells me, great, there's a little box up here, a gray box at the top in Chrome that actually tells you when you've done things correctly or if there's an error, which is another reason why we like Chrome so much, because it actually alerts you to some of those things. So you can just see that, great, we did that. Here's the date. This would keep track of how long this youth is enrolled, etc. So I'm just going to close that. So, yes?
We in North Carolina are not going to have that enrollment box, right?
Or you'll have the enrollment box, but you may not track this actual type of information.
Okay, we don't need to enter it though. Okay.
However, what you will need to do is you'll need to change the status from pending to enrolled. So that will still be a step you need to do, but you don't have to connect a date to it. So you can just go in here, click Enrolled, and select. If you have subsites, you would select the site, or it would just say Duke here, or whatever, and hit Save. You don't need to connect a date to it, but you do need to make sure that you change the use from pending to enrolled.
So for everybody we do a TOMS on, we will have to enter. This pending is going to show up.
Yes.
Okay, and then we'll change it to enrolled. Okay.
Exactly, yeah.
Okay.
So that's the same structure for everyone, regardless of whether you use the WIFI or the TOM, or what information you collect. Yeah, but you don't again have to put a date there. So, so that's that step. So yeah, these first two steps that we were talking about, creating that new youth record, so creating what we just did, and then step 2, which was changing from pending to enrolled, is the same for everybody. Here's where we get a little different at step 3. And this is that type of information that you guys in North Carolina may not collect. And I'm going to just slide over here to the WrapTrack tab. So I'm going to click on this. And this information about school is actually from the WIFI interview. And you know what? I want to pull one thing up because I want to say, and I should have probably already memorized this by now, but shame on me for not. But I want to say that this is on, yeah, okay, it is. It's on the demographics form, the WIFI demographics form. So for those of you who use the WIFI, obviously this is sort of that second page to the demographics form, because that's front and back document. So this is that second page where it asks about has the youth been in school any time in the last 30 days, etc. Again, you guys in North Carolina, you're not going to enter this data. You just leave it blank because it's not something that you collect. So you'll just ignore this step. But let's just say that we want to keep track of this information. One thing I will point out, though, for everybody on the line is that there are questions throughout the system that actually, if you select yes and move on, it'll go to the next question. However, some of the questions have, second steps, like Part B. This is one of those types of questions. So if I click on no, it actually opens up this whole next part that I would need to answer. But those are hidden unless you make that appropriate selection. So you'll note that throughout the system. It's the same for the Wi-Fi, Tom, throughout. So I'm just going to say no for the purposes of the example, and I'm just going to click Other and type whatever because I just want to show you that as an example. And let's just go ahead and say NA. And that's all I'm going to do, just for this. Hit save. Told me it was saved successfully. Great. Everything's fine here. All looks good. So that was step 3. Again, North Carolina, I'm not going to do step 3. But now I'm ready to actually enter data. So I'm going to click on Assessments, and this is our step 4, and this is the last step for people who are actually just entering this type of data. So I'm going to click on Assessments. And you can see that I don't have any forms listed as of right now, but I can add them by clicking on that button. And again, some folks may only see the Wi-Fi, some folks may see the Wi-Fi and the Tom. You might only see the Tom, or you may start to get interested in the Wi-Fi EZ, want to replace the Wi-Fi 4 with Wi-Fi EZ, what have you. But April and I control sort of what you guys see here in this list, and that's based on your license agreements with the University of Washington. So if you've decided that you just are only using and paying for the Tom, you're only going to see that here. But we can control what those look like. So I actually want to go ahead and do a Tom, and then we'll do a Wi-Fi. So I'm going to click on Tom, and you might note that even when I expand this, it doesn't really open it up too much, and that's because this particular box right here is limited in how the programmers were able to make that size. So that is, one thing that we were hoping to change, but didn't really make that possible for us. So we kind of are just working with that. But visually, as you're going through, you can see that for those of you that use the Tom, this looks pretty similar in terms of the type of information that you're entering off that first page of the Tom. Some of this information would be similar to what you would have entered for a Tom demographics form, and those are obviously, like that used to be 3 questions, and then you just enter it. You guys in North Carolina, Christina, you would enter that type of information, the Tom demo form?
Yeah.
Okay, good. I just wanted to make sure. So that's just all here now. You're just going to this one sort of place, essentially. And you will note, and I will point this out, we've already alerted our programmers to it, and we're working on trying to fix this error. But you will note that Facilitator ID and Observer ID are not here. And we are working to hopefully change that. If there is, for some unknown reason, they're not able to add that for whatever reason, we will certainly alert the community to that, but we're not going to make sort of any announcement about that until we find out whether or not that's an issue. But we're hoping to just get that added right to the top here. So stay tuned for that. But some of this information should look pretty much the same. I'm just going to go ahead and fill some of this out since we're in here. You can tab to these things. I don't know if you can see that when I tab, it's actually bringing me to certain boxes that are then being highlighted, and then you can just go to one here, and then if I wanted to write something about that use, this, blah, 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 whatever. And then you could also just kind of scroll down and say, okay, here's one. I don't need to put a note about that person. Here we go, whatever. So that's the type of thing that you would be, doing for the Tom. Pretty self-explanatory. This stuff is all going to be really easy to figure out. Now, one thing I'm going to say, and I'll repeat this for the WIFI 4, it is not the case for the WIFI Easy. We're not sure what happened in terms of the communication with the programmers, but we think it's going to be fixed pretty soon, so that's not a problem. When you're going through here, don't necessarily hit save every time after you finish one of these sections or tabs, because we noticed that there are a couple things that it wants you to enter before you actually can save the entire thing. So that's important to note. Our recommendation, and again we had certain recommendations in Wonders as well to make ease of data entry happen, our recommendation is to, again, just enter this information, go through all the tabs. When you get to the end, hit save. Same thing for the WIFI, same thing for the TOM. So that's just something to jot down. Obviously, for whatever reason, if you do need to step away from your computer and it's going to be longer than that time period of your inactivity amount that you've selected, you would probably want to save. Alrighty, let's just go through and we'll just really quickly, I'm just going to do this information, and I did this on purpose. You'll note that 2A does not have an answer in it, and it allows me to move on to the next section. Again, this is another piece that we wanted to have fixed prior to the rollout of the site, but it's just been a challenge to kind of get this this piece of it fixed, this error. So we are aware of it, but it probably will not be edited until the next version of WrapTrack, which we're hoping isn't going to be too far from now. But same for the WIFI, same for the TOM. You can continue on without completing every single question. So as you're doing data entry, for those of you that are in this system, it's going to be important to note that you really want to keep track of that and make sure that you've answered every question that you intended to. Obviously, if something is missing, you can still document that. But if you accidentally just tab through and forget something before you hit save at the very end, you may just want to click through these tabs as you're just getting used to the system to make sure that you actually did answer every question. That's not going to be an issue you'll have to worry about forever, but for right now, yeah. So we like the flow of how, for the TOM, it's been separated out instead of just having one long scrolling thing. And it's been easy to just tab through and enter the number or drop down and select it. Again, that's all very similar in terms of what used to be in Wonders, whatever your notes are. So let's just keep going through here and get this over so that, oops, I did it again. Look at that. So that we can get to the end. Okay. Almost. The TOM is lengthy, so. All right, so we're at the last page. All righty. And obviously, again, these questions are all the same. All of that structure is the same, so nothing to really be alarmed there. If you had any observer notes, you'd put all that information here. And then your end time, and I'm just going to say, oh, I think we did 10 a.m. So let's make it realistic. And this is where then you're at the end. It's going to allow you to save it. So just hit save. All the forms and all the details in the form save successfully. So that's good to know. And that is it. You just hit close, and then it shows up right there in your forms. And again, if you have the ability to edit something, if you need to go back and double check something, you're more than welcome to do that or are able to do that. And again, for those folks who are sort of our local heads, you may want to decide if that's a change that you want to make for those folks doing data entry, if you want to allow them to be able to edit. You can also allow them to be able to edit and not delete necessarily. So so that might be something to think about as you're trying to figure out your structure and your permissions for this stuff. All right, so let's go ahead and do a WIFI really quickly, just so that we are balanced here. And you can see for the WIFI information, again, some of this stuff transfers right over. And this is the youth form. So even if I enter the caregiver name here and the facilitator name here, it will not transfer to their youth homepage. And I'll show you what I mean by that. So we'll just say this is Jane, this is Bob. You can, when you're in here for the first time, you can select the date that the interview occurred on. I'm going to leave it as today's date because, you know, we've just recently enrolled this youth, and I don't want the system to think that we interviewed them prior to enrollment. So we'll leave it as today's date, but you can you know, adjust this. Let's say you interviewed someone on Monday and you're now entering it on Thursday. You can say, okay, it was done on Monday, and change that. And as you may already have figured out, interview date is the same as today's date in Wonders. So. And we'll just say that this was done at 3 p.m., 6 months, phone, and the interviewer's name is Tim. I can't remember what age I said this youth was, so I'm going to say 14. Oh, I think I didn't put a date. That's right. And yes, to a team. All right, and so again, WIFI here, don't save until you get to the end because it actually, I'll show you the error message that pops up. Lengthy interview, blah, blah, blah. It actually wants you to make sure that you enter the what's it called? I'll show you. End time before you can save it. So that's just like one safeguard to allow you to have to complete this before you actually save it. So from the youth introduction, just move right on to the next phase. And again, all of this is identical to, you know, what you used to see in Wonders. So this should all make sense. All right, continue moving through this. And again, you'll just want to make sure that you're paying attention to whether or not you've completed every question. Don't want to leave anything blank. And then here's where you put your feedback, blah, 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 whatever it is. Okay, so we said 3 o'clock. We'll say 3:15, and now I can hit save, and it says, great, everything was done successfully, and I can close it. And now you'll see that a youth WIFI form shows up there. And again, edit, delete, whatever makes sense for your community in terms of the folks that do data entry. So those are your 4 steps. For those people that are really focusing on data entry, those are the things that you're going to need to remember. Obviously, some of those are not relevant for folks that are doing the TOM only, so keep that in mind. But any questions about sort of that first little bit, getting a new youth record, enrolling that youth, completing the school information if applicable, adding your assessments, your forms, what have you. Any questions about that?
Nope.
All right. So the next part of this that I'm going to actually show for you guys will be the reporting features. So some of you, this may not be relevant. You know, I'm not even sure if at this point, for folks that don't do that work, and this is up to the leaders of those groups, but you may even want to just hop off the line at this point. That's up to you guys. But you know, this next section is really structured around those individuals, probably with admin privileges that are going to be running reports and exports. So if it seems like that's not relevant to you and it's okay with everybody, you're more than welcome to hop off.
I have a quick question, Hattie. When can we start using this? Because before I hop off, when can Renee start entering data?
Yeah, so you can, as soon as I'm essentially finished with this training, what I'm going to do is I have to do a process of saving the recording, which can take a little bit of time, but I should be able to finish that today. Now, you guys, you know, are obviously on the East Coast, so I'm a bit behind in time, but so I'm hoping that I can send all of the materials to you by the end of the day today.
Okay.
So you'll have the link in the PowerPoint, the recording of the training, and additionally some other materials. Now, Christina, though, you may want to stay on for the reporting features, though. Is that something that you do?
I'm thinking what we usually do is we export the data and we do our own reporting.
Okay. Well, why don't you hang on for that piece at least, so I can show you the exporting, because it is different.
Sure. Absolutely.
Okay. Okay, great. So let's look at some of this, and I'll really just quickly kind of go through the reports because that's fairly similar to what it used to look like, and then we'll focus on exports and see if anybody has any administrative questions in terms of getting your sites set up, and then I'll let you guys go. So we're pretty close to being finished here. So I just went back to the home page just to take a look at that. But what I want to do now is go ahead and go down to that WrapTrack reports and data exports. I'll just show you really quickly the Fidelity WIFI 4 reports, for example. So this is, again, same for Tom. If you wanted to look at the reports that are here, you can do that. I'm just going to click on a random one. I'm just going to click on Report 6. And let's say you have a lot of subsites, multiple subsites. You might want to click on all organizations so you can make sure that that's showing everybody. Or you may only want to, pull by a certain user, for example. I'm just going to hit continue, and this shows me that I only have these 2 subsites, and it's going to pull them both, and that's great. That's what I wanted it to do. If you want to select a certain date range when pulling reports, you can do that. I'm not going to do that. I'm just going to hit all, and because there's really minimal data in here. So I'm just going to go ahead and, at this drop-down should look familiar, first or most, or the mean score. And here's that section I was talking to you about. So, like, if you do want to, use this keep qualification checkbox, that's what you're going to select if you want to use these qualifications throughout your reports. If you don't, you wouldn't select it. We'll hit continue, and it'll generate our report that we just asked it to produce. And just wait for that for 1 second. Okay, so as this finishes loading, what I'll want is to note is to draw your attention to the top part of the form here. You can see that if this particular report happened to be longer than 1 page, you could select and go to the next page. Also, what it does is it tells you the data that you just pulled this for, the report, what that's called, that I pulled it for all organizations by the mean value, looking at this date range, printed on this date, etc. And it just gives me all that information, which is, great, easy to navigate, that type of thing. Now let's say that you are looking at the reports and you're generating this. Even the export, I think, might have a similar feature throughout this system. But if you're in here and someone is data entering and you know that that's the case and you want to make sure that you're including the most up-to-date data in here, you're going to hit this refresh tab before you either print this or save this or export it or whatever you're doing. So you hit refresh, and it just automatically populates with the most up-to-date data. The other feature I want to show you here is this export one. You can push this into Excel or into Word. And, Christina, I know that you guys are usually using the raw data in the exports, but
Right.
if for whatever reason, any of the graphs or figures seem to be appropriate to use
Sure.
in some of the other reports that you do, you might want to push this into Word or Excel. I'll show you what it looks like. Let's open it up here. And then you can actually push it on to my other screen, but you can actually see, that you could grab this whole thing, copy it, and put it into your own report that you're
wonderful.
working on.
That's
So
great.
that's just, nice to know if you need to do that.
Mm-hmm.
So, I'll push it into PDF, and this might be the appropriate thing. Like, let's say you want to, save this report and email it to your supervisor or, to somebody else in your state that needs to see it, bring it to a meeting, what have you. So that's essentially it for reports. I'll just want to show you one quick other example. This is, if you click on the next link, whatever it is that you want to look at, this is where that keep qualification checkbox comes into play. And it says, do you want your existing selections? And I do want to continue to pull the reports with those qualifications. So I'm just going to hit yes. And this pops up. And this is the last piece that I want to show you about reports. There's at the very top of this toolbar, for some reports that have been combined, there will be a drop-down list and it gives you examples of what the other reports are that are in here. So I'm, for example, going to click on Fidelity Scores by Principal and Respondent. And again, this is WIFI related. And then I'm just going to click, I want to only see, facilitator no, I only want to see caregiver and team member, excuse me, so I've unselected facilitator and youth. So I have those options. I've selected that I want to see the part that says principal and respondent, and I'm going to hit show. And it'll generate a report for me. And then obviously there's actually no team member data either, but caregiver compared to national mean here is what you would see. And again, you can export this into PDF, Excel, Word, what have you, manipulate this graph to be able to use it in a report that you guys do, whatever makes sense. So that's that. That's the reports. Same thing for the TOM reports, so I'm not going to really focus on those. I'm going to go ahead and move right into the same section where I go click on Data Export. Okay, did anybody have any questions about the reports, though?
Nope.
All right, sounds good. Sure, so this is where you're going to export the data, and there are a couple of things here as well that we have noted that are missing, and so we want to make sure to just bring your attention to that. And I've jotted that down, and now for the life of me, I cannot remember what it is, but it's already written down and given to our programmers, so they're taking care of it, but I can't remember what it was that we said was missing. Either way, so this section here will be updated slightly to include something else. Gosh, I really wish my brain would work right now. But at any rate, you can export data by a single use, by multiple use if that's something you're interested in doing. You would then select that checkbox and look at the form that you would want to pull. I'm going to go ahead and hit caregiver because I think there's more caregiver data in here than anything else in our test files. It will pull up then all of the use that have caregiver forms. And you can, use these little navigation things to select all, or you can only, choose half of that, or select none, and that way, whatever makes sense. It doesn't matter. I'm just going to select all. Then you would go down here to your filter data, and this is where in the content drop box, sorry about that, you would select whether or not you want to look at only numeric values, text values, or both. I'm just going to do both for the example here, but you will probably only pull numeric values if you're doing additional data analysis with this raw file. You can do comma separated or Excel. I'm going to select Excel spreadsheet. And then the scope here allows you to choose, do you want all of the data? Do you want it for this month or this year, or whatever the qualifications are? A lot of folks may be choosing specific dates. And if you do, you'll note that right now these boxes are grayed out. I can't do anything yet. But if I actually select specific dates, then it allows me to open this up. And I can choose, okay, let's say I want to look at all of 2012. I would select that. For this example, I'm going to keep it as all, again, for minimal data in here. And finally, let's say that you wanted to export this data, but you do use identifying information in WrapTrack, and you don't want that in your Excel report. You could then just go ahead and select that, and that will not show up in the raw data, so it removes it for you already. I'm going to leave it unchecked because this is all fake. So preview output is the button that you would select, and then again, this visually is a little bit more challenging to see as it can be with the reports. So what we recommend doing is actually saving that. Before I do that, I will quickly show you that, again, you can email this, which is fantastic. A nice new option. You can select who it's to, add the subject. It's already attached right there. Put a little message in here and hit send. So if you, again, need to send this to a supervisor or somebody that's needing to have this data, that's how you would do that. I'm not going to actually send that. I'm just going to show you how that would work. And now let's go ahead and save it. So it actually pops up down here again, and pull it over from my other screen. Always pushes it away. So then this is what your export will look like. Just a little bit cleaner in terms of the way it looks. We visually like that a little bit better. Positive and negative feedback. One thing I'll want to make a note of for you guys here is, and this is going to be the same for the TOM, the value labels are different than what they used to be. So that's important to note. They've changed. Obviously, this is for the Wi-Fi, so you can see that this might make sense for those who use the Wi-Fi, that this actually is labeled engagement question 1 numeric, engagement question 1 text, which would typically be 1.1, 1.2, 1.3, 1.4, that kind of thing. And then you get to the next phase, which is planning question 1, which is 2.1. So that's just something to note. It's the same for the TOMs. It's, sort of self-explanatory when you just take a minute to look at it, but we will be providing a user manual with a data dictionary in case folks, have questions about that. But so that information will be there. And then finally, you can see just here in this export that it provides, again, the numeric and the text because I asked it to push that data out here, but you can probably just select numeric if that's something that you're doing for your data entries, data analyses. All right, any questions about exporting?
Nope.
Great, okay. So, yeah, not too challenging. Last thing I want to show you before we end today is another site that we have to log into. And this is again, This is again for those folks that will be doing more of those administrative pieces, might be your local head or what we now call the configuration admin. Going to go to your menu button, hit admin, administrative tool, and it takes you to this section. And this is where you're going to go ahead and add additional users if you need to. This is where you would manage users. You can, as the configuration admin, you can make them enabled or disable them. This particular configuration only has one user, so that's not possible. You can edit them, whatever you need to do. When you go into add user, though, I want to just kind of point out a couple of things that are going to be interesting to note. That when, as a admin or a configuration admin, and you're creating a new user, if you need to do that, you'll be generating their username and their password, and you'll need to share that with them. Again, because otherwise they won't have access to the site, and they will want to manage that password from that point on.
More about the different privileges.
Right.
And then
yeah.
I'll know whether we should just have one's the same.
Oh, we're on.
Oh, sorry about that.
That's okay. But that's good. I'm glad you said that. No, that's good. I'm glad that came out because that's the next step sort of that you would do if, once you decide, no, it's fine, not at all, don't worry about it. If you're then doing, if you've added a new user or you're managing a current user, that's what you would then want to manage is your permissions, and that's what I was going to mention next, so that's a great segue. So, if you've gotten your usernames and your passwords figured out, you need to make sure that you are adding the most up-to-date, accurate email address. So that's how folks will then get your password if they've forgotten it. You'll then want to select what type of role that person's going to be in. And again, these are super flexible, as you may remember from the beginning of our demonstration. Very flexible. You can choose, everyone can be a program admin if that makes sense. That's up to you. Here's also where you would then add, okay, what subsite if they only connected to one particular subsite, do I want them to only see that data? And if that's the case, you're going to select that subsite for both lists and hit OK. So that's another thing to point out when you're adding or managing a user. So finally, let's go ahead and say we just created this person. I'm not actually going to create a person, but let's say we did, and we've assigned them this program admin role, as you can see. Next step is to go to your permissions. So click on that. Take a second here. All right, and you can see that the very first thing it wants you to do is then select the role that you're going to give permissions to. So it could be your program admin, supervisory, team member. Again, those jurisdictional or configuration admins have the ability to really see all of this type of thing. And April and I have already selected what permissions those types of roles have, and then those roles will provide these permissions. So let's walk through what that looks like.
Patty, can I ask a quick question?
Sure.
So let's say, for example, the facilitators, if, we have obviously the handwritten format for the facilitator form, and now, as you know, we're piloting the fillable one. This looks a lot like the fillable, and I was just curious to know, is there a way to limit, to give access to our facilitators to then put in their evaluation, but only have access to their own form as opposed to accessing the data?
Yeah, I mean, we can certainly set that up, and here's where you would probably do that here. You could say, okay, let's let's maybe say that we would select them as a supervisory admin then, that you would want to make sure, obviously, that you've added them as a user and given them all of those passwords, etc. And then you would select what they have the ability to see. So if they're, again, just using the Wi-Fi 4 tool, then let's just say for whatever reason they're only doing data entry for caregivers. You could even unselect all of these options and then go to export. We don't want them to do that. You go to reports, click none. So really all they can do is data entry for the Wi-Fi caregiver then, for example. You then want to make sure you do address all of these other tabs though, because you then don't want them to be able to do any of these things. You want to make sure. Yeah, so you can really, really limit it or expand upon it if, whatever your needs are.
That's great.
But I want to point out, though, that whatever role you choose, so you have to be really kind of conscious of the individual that you're thinking of, the user you're thinking of, and, then what role they're going to fit in, because everybody who's then in a supervisory admin role will have only those privileges. So you just want to be aware of the fact that, you might have a couple of different people out there and really need to kind of figure out, okay, do they need to be the program admin that then has the ability to edit documents and whatnot? And again, it's all very specific to how you kind of set up a user, because then they can only see that particular data that they just entered for that particular subsite if that's sort of what you've got. So it's once you get in here and kind of play around with this section, it starts to really kind of flow easier. You can give them enrollment permissions, and again, for those folks that you were talking about, you may not need them to view this type of stuff. They might want to create a record. The home, the home tab here is fine. I mean, this doesn't really matter. Not many people are going to be adjusting that dashboard there. But again, yeah.
If they have to just start it and need to leave, it's sort of set up just like you would data input, where you can just save it and then they can always return and complete it.
Yeah, and especially if you allow, where's the one where you allow them?
And that's the same. This is the same for the demographics. They can enter the demographics and the because our facilitators do both the demographics and the.
Yeah, and so you'd want to make sure that, then this information is here, edit use info, add, I think that might be the only thing.
Okay.
Well, you can click edit family member, but you just have to, I can't remember exactly where all of these different checkboxes live, so you just have to kind of go through them and see, which little section they're in, but you can specifically say, yes, I only want this person to be able to add this information, this type of data for this form, and edit it if that's what you would like. If for whatever reason they need to go do another task, you want them to save it and then be able to go back into it later, they'd need to have the ability to edit it. So, but just play around in here and sort of get familiar with what the different sections here have to offer. And then again, just remember that you can do this for all of these roles, and you'd want to make sure that you're putting people in these roles that make sense, because, again, all supervisory admins will then have those permissions. All program admins will then have, whatever permissions you decide. And what I want to say for both groups here that are on the phone, if you have any issues at all while setting this up, because, again, I haven't memorized this section, but I am confident and comfortable with where things are, just let us know, because we can help walk through this with you. We'll pull it up, get on a separate phone call, do another quick, webinar link if we need to, so we can actually do it, then you can play around with it. Whatever we need to do to get you guys feeling comfortable with this section, we're happy to help. So, as you're playing around and feel stuck or lost, just let us know. Give us a shout out.
Great.
All right, so that's what I wanted you guys to know about that. Final piece here, we're logging out, closing down this section, is to go right back to our PowerPoint. Whoops, from current slide. Why did I not hit that? Ooh, hang on one second. Let's go here. Sorry, guys. Sorry. Okay, from current slide. There it is. is to kind of look at the data that's in there. And again, Contra Costa, you guys have done some of this, but if you feel like there's anything you might have missed when you were doing your beta testing and now you're in this real live site because you were looking at the demo site before and the data that had just been mapped, but it might be good to just double check one more time, handful of youth, spot check some forms. Christina, we're just asking folks to really kind of go in there and look at, whether or not when you go in for a youth, is their name, date of birth, ID all matching up correctly? Do they have the correct TOM forms for you guys in there? Does that data look accurate? That kind of thing. It's really just a very quick check. You can even do it in a day or, get it done over the course of a week, or one person can knock it out really quickly. It's up to you guys. You could even
you mean after we enter one case, right?
No, this is the data that's already in there because your data from Wonders is in. Yeah.
Oh, okay, okay, got it.
Yeah, so you're testing that data that's been mapped over. So your current data that's in the system was mapped over from Wonders, and that's what you want to just kind of check it, make sure it all looks accurate. Use your forms that you have to be able to do that because the Wonders site is down, obviously, and then there's this little bullet here, but I want you to ignore this, guys, because this is a Wonders staging site that was originally set up to help with this process of checking the data. However, we're having an issue with our WRAP info page, so I'm not going to direct you here because this is not working appropriately at the moment. But yeah, so you're just really going to quickly do that. A couple things to point out, that if you did not complete a WIFI or a TOM demographic form for every single youth, they may not have all transferred over. Also, if you're looking at reports, for example, that were in Wonders and you're comparing them to WrapTrack, that's not necessarily going to be accurate because there are a lot of errors in Wonders at the end. And then finally here, it's permission-based, this system, obviously, as you noted as we were looking at the admin tab. So if you're missing the ability to do something, so check with that local head first, then check with us if you are the local head and you're not able to kind of figure it out. So that's something to note. And finally, we'd like you to get this sort of file that I'm going to show you really quickly here back to us by the 10th at the latest, if there are any mapping errors. And again, Contra Costa, this will look familiar, but what you would want to do is just make sure to get it to us as soon as possible if you see any issues or what have you, and you'd send that to WRAP eval. Let's go ahead and close this and open that document up. So basically what we're looking at here are the gray sections. That's what you're going to want to fill out. And basically that's information that says, okay, where were you in the system when you saw an error? Were you in the WIFI forms, the TOM export, whatever it was, who you are and your organization name, and then your login and your password, because again, we cannot replicate that error without having that information. So we'll need to have access to your login and password, so please make sure to include that. And then finally, the information that you're going to include about any error or issue that you see in there will be set up this way. So for example, it could be an error that's a bug, and a bug would be something like, I tried to export this information, it gave me an error message, did not allow me to move forward. So bug is something that you cannot move beyond in the system. It will not allow you to continue forward without a fix. So that's what a bug is, and these descriptions are really up here as well in this column D here. An edit is something that you've seen, you caught, there's an error, but you can still move forward. And a great example here is somebody misspelled wraparound. That's misspelled. We want to obviously make sure that that's correct, but that's not going to hinder you from moving forward in the system. You'll still be able to do everything normally. And then finally, a new development is anything that you guys see that might be really helpful to add to the system that's not currently in there. If you've got a great new idea, toss it in here, put it as a new development, and hopefully at some point we can maybe incorporate that into another version of WrapTrack, because as you probably know, this system is always going to be updated as we go. So those are the things to note. Always please include a screenshot if you can. Shrink it really small down to size, but at least it allows the programmers to be able to see sort of what you're looking at. So that's also very, very helpful. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and I'm just going to close all this stuff out. I don't want to save that. And I'm going to stop recording now unless there are any other questions that folks have.